There are places on this planet that hold secrets too dark and bizarre to be explained. Strange disappearances, disturbing encounters, and the kind of stories that don't just scare you, they stick with you. This is one of those stories. In 2018, an anonymous user on an obscure forum for missing persons cases posted a terrifying account from a former park ranger named Daniel Grayson. Grayson worked for the National Park Service for over 27 years, and though he had seen a lot of bizarre things, nothing came close to what happened in Black Hollow. That post, like so many others, disappeared without explanation. But Daniel's story? That didn't stay buried. Black Hollow National Park, not its real name, was located deep in the Appalachian Mountains, a place where cell service was non-existent. Trails wound for miles into untouched wilderness, and the tree canopy was so thick that even at high noon, the forest felt more like dusk. It was breathtaking, beautiful, and peaceful. It was also a place where people inexplicably vanished. Not just the occasional lost hiker or reckless thrill seeker. No, this particular park had an unusually high number of people who had gone missing under unexplained circumstances. The disappearances in Black Hollow didn't leave behind bodies, no blood trails, no scraps of clothing. It was as if the earth itself had opened up and swallowed these people whole. And for years, the Park Service treated it like a statistical anomaly, until the night Daniel saw what was really out there. In September 1998, Daniel was stationed at a remote ranger outpost on the farthest edge of the park, along with another ranger named Mike. The two had been assigned to a missing hiker case, a man named Tom Baker, who had failed to check in after a planned 3-day solo camping trip. But Tom wasn't just missing. The night before his last known whereabouts were discovered, Tom's emergency radio crackled to life with a distress call. "There's something outside my tent," Tom whispered into the radio. Daniel asked him to clarify. "It's not an animal. Too tall. It's not moving. It's watching me, without eyes." The rangers exchanged a glance. It wasn't unheard of for hikers to want to use the park to experience their mushroom trip while being one with Mother Nature. It was, however, unheard of for hikers to hike this far into such a remote area just to experience their high. Daniel ran his fingers through his already disheveled hair, unsure of what to say next. Before he could respond, Tom's panicked voice came through the radio again, this time with even more urgency. "It's making this weird clicking sound, like bones tapping together. There's more than one." With that, the radio cut out. And then, silence. Daniel and Mike were dispatched to Tom's last known coordinates that same night. It took them nearly an hour to navigate the narrow, winding trails, their headlamps muted by the thickening fog that now blanketed the forest. When the rangers finally reached the site, everything looked remarkably normal. Tom's tent was there, still zipped up. His gear was neatly arranged, seemingly untouched. Even his campfire was still smoldering. Daniel called out, but received no answer. Mike then made his attempt, calling out louder this time, but neither man received a response. Daniel headed toward the tent, hoping against hope to find Tom safely tucked inside. However, the moment he stepped into that clearing, every hair on his body stood on end. Something was wrong. The forest was deathly silent. It wasn't the usual quiet of the night, which was always accompanied by distant owls hooting across the forest or mice rustling through the fallen leaves. This silence was eerie, a suffocating void of sound, as if the entire forest was holding its breath in trepidation. And then click, 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 click. "Jesus Christ, what is that?" Mike whispered hoarsely. Daniel turned. His stomach dropped as his mind tried to process the scene before him. A figure stood just at the edge of the trees. But it wasn't human. It was at least 8 feet tall, its limbs impossibly long and thin, its skin a sickly grayish hue that seemed almost translucent under the flashlight's yellow beam. And its face, if it could be called that, was just horrifically wrong. It was smooth and featureless, save for 2 deep, shadowed indentations where its eyes should have been. Then, as Daniel recoiled in horror, it tilted forward, not like it was stepping, but as if gravity itself had shifted around it. And then it clicked. A rhythmic, hollow sound, like bones being tapped together in perfect, unnatural sync. The creature itself, however, remained still, watching the Rangers with its non-existent eyes. The clicking must have been some kind of call, because, just then, from behind it, a second figure stepped into view, then a third, then a fourth. Daniel turned and bolted for the truck, blind terror propelling him forward. He noticed Mike just ahead of him, their boots crunching against the dirt path as they ran in sheer panic. But as they sprinted, Daniel made the huge mistake of looking back. And what he saw nearly made him collapse in a pool of absolute terror. There were dozens of them. An almost solid wall of impossibly tall, skeletal figures emerging from the trees, their empty faces turned toward him, moving in an eerie, synchronized motion. To his horror, they were gaining on him and fast. One of them, the tallest one, lifted a long, bony arm and pointed directly at him. Then their rhythmic clicking noises grew louder, faster, closer. The truck was only 30 yards away when Mike suddenly let out a shrill, blood-curdling scream. Daniel spun around just in time to see his friend yanked backward. One of the slender things had grabbed Mike by the ankle and was effortlessly dragging him toward the trees. Daniel lunged, grabbing Mike by his arms and pulling with every ounce of strength he had in the opposite direction. He was unpleasantly surprised at the strength of the creature, considering its horrifically thin frame. For a few frozen moments, he felt his friend might be pulled apart in the strange tug of war. Then, for a heart-stopping moment, a cold and suffocating force suddenly amplified the slender creature's strength. Daniel stumbled forward as he was pulled along toward the tree line, refusing to let go of his friend. Though not a small man, he felt nearly powerless against the spindly-looking creature just a few feet in front of him. Then, just as suddenly as the creature had grabbed Mike, it let him go. Not one to waste an opportunity, the ranger scrambled to his feet, and the 2 men ran as fast as they could toward their truck. They dove into their seats, slamming the doors shut as Daniel jammed the key into the ignition. As the truck roared to life, its headlights cut across the darkened tree line. And the figures, all of them, had stopped moving. Once again, a wall of slender limbs and featureless faces, just standing there, watching without eyes. Then, as the truck peeled out onto the dirt road, they silently turned, one by one, and morphed back into the forest. The next morning, a full search team was dispatched and thoroughly combed the area. Tom Baker was never found. To this day, his case remains unsolved. His body has never been recovered. The official report cites misadventure. Of course, Daniel knew that wasn't true, but could the truth be told? No park official would agree to list "slender things got him" as the official reason someone went missing. Over the years, he obsessively started paying close attention to missing persons reports in other national parks and compared them to his own park. The patterns were subtle, but undeniable. The Black Hollow disappearances weren't isolated. Wherever they happened, rangers reported the same eerie details. All of the reports mentioned the unexplained clicking sounds in the night. That could not be a coincidence. Also, there were many vanished hikers whose campsites remained oddly untouched. And every so often, there was a witness, someone who'd been lucky enough to escape. They all described impossibly tall, silent figures standing just beyond the tree line, watching, though they had no eyes. They all seemed to be waiting. But for what? And why did they take Tom Baker? What had they done to him? Daniel shuddered, refusing to entertain his morbid thoughts. He always wanted to warn the hikers going to the more remote areas of the park, but he never knew what to say. They'd think he was crazy if he told them the truth. Instead, he gave the usual stale warnings of, "Watch out for bears," and "Be aware of your surroundings." He was always torn as to how honest he should be with people. Perhaps the post on this forum was Daniel's way of getting his message out. If this story is to be believed, it's best to be very cautious when hiking or camping in remote areas. Remember the moral of the story. If you hear a strange rhythmic clicking, like bones tapping together, run like hell is right behind you. And that is the story of the Black Hollow Watchers, one of the strangest and most terrifying cryptid encounters ever recorded. What do you think? Have you heard of anything like this before? If so, tell us in the comments below. Also, please don't forget to like and subscribe.